Hello, what's up, and welcome back everybody to the Film Chronicles. Today I'm taking you into part 2 of the Creature Feature video that I did the other day. In today's video, we're going to be going over some past titles that really changed the game for films like these by doing some of the best practical work I've ever seen on some of these films. Also, the stories hold up and are a lot better than most stories out, and the lore that they created for some of these films is pretty dang interesting. So much so that to this day, fans still ask questions regarding the universes that these films brought up into question. And I'll have part 1 linked for you guys somewhere. It's either going to be in the top left or the top right corner, so just be on the lookout for that. As always, thank you guys for watching, and be sure to click that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and leave a comment if you feel like it so we could discuss some more, and leave some suggestions for genres or movies. So with that being said, let's just jump right into it with my number 1 pick. Kind of a two-parter because both of these films are equally just as great. It just depends on which type of horror you're into, whether that's straight up suspense or straight up like action slash horror. And this two-parter is going to be revolving around Alien and Alien. So first up, we have Alien in 1979, directed by Ridley Scott, who you guys know from directing Blade Runner, Legend, let's see what else. Hannibal is another movie, Black Hawk Down, he's done Kingdom of Heaven, American Gangster, and of course Prometheus, and then some other kind of forgettable movies like Exodus, Gods and Kings. Not only Exodus, Gods and Kings, but also Prometheus and also Alien Covenant. I just think both films were a letdown. They had a lot of hype on them, but ultimately it seems like he kind of just held himself back. Anyway, I'm not here to rip on Ridley Scott. I still love Alien and I still love Blade Runner. Alright, with that said, I'll get into some backstory here. So this was directed by Ridley Scott, of course, and then the screenplay and the story was written by Dan O'Bannon, who actually was inspired from working with Carpenter on a film called Dark Star, and he created an alien there, but that left him wanting to make an even better alien. So once more of the story was figured out, and once they figured out how to get the alien on board with the actual astronauts, they moved along with the project, and eventually it was offered to Ridley Scott, who got together a pretty amazing cast. We have Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, and of course, she's badass even to this day. That character is written so well. She's smart, strong, and she's equally rational and equally just as good as a leader as any other character that you could think of that you like as a protagonist. Also, Tom Skerritt, Harry Dean Stanton, John Hurt, Ian Holm, who the name might not sound familiar, but he played Bilbo in Lord of the Rings. Aside from the really good cast, the film itself is shot really well. You feel very claustrophobic because it's all set aboard Nostromo, so it's not really spread out in a vast space. You're isolated, you're contained. You feel the weight that the crew is feeling when they're being hunted by the alien, and it works so well. Even the set design is so good. You know, not everything's shiny, everything has kind of a wear and tear, which adds to that realistic element that we weren't far away from having technology like that. The face huggers, the eggs, the chest burster sequence, the derelict ship that they explore and find the eggs on, like everything that they put into the movie works really well. Spoiler alert, the alien ends up hunting down pretty much the entire crew in a very systematic way, and the crew also ends up dealing with Ash, who is an android designated to help the crew and be aboard the ship. It ends up going rogue on them because it has company directives to save the specimen, even if that means that the crew dies themselves. They're expendable, but the company wants the alien to be kept alive. And at the end of it, it comes down to Ripley and the alien itself, and this is where her arc starts developing, where she becomes confident because of the, it's bad circumstances. Her crew just got slaughtered, so it ends up inspiring her in a way to not be the last one to die, to not let herself die, to make it out alive and spread the story so that way her friends did not die in vain. And we'll see how that ends up turning out, because part 2 of the two-parter, like I was telling you, this is going to be on Aliens, which came out in 1986. 7 years after Alien, this one's directed by James Cameron, who is hot off of The Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael Biehn, and Linda Hamilton. Not only did James Cameron direct himself, but he also was developing the screenplay and is credited as having to have written the screenplay while he was finishing up the edits for The Terminator at the time. And his approach was to focus more on the terror aspect versus the horror aspect, but while still respecting the horror tone that Scott had set up with Alien. Even Sigourney Weaver herself had doubts on working on the film with Cameron, but after meeting and sitting down with Cameron, they developed more on her character and her backstory and what they wanted to do with her in the future films and future arcs that they were going to write for her. As good as that sounds, though, Fox actually had a dispute with Weaver over a payment dispute, and it wasn't until after Cameron had to come to her defense by refusing to film without her, as she had signed on when he was developing the sequel from the very beginnings. Fox finally buckled, and they made a deal, and she went on to film Aliens. If that wasn't the case, we probably wouldn't have had Sigourney Weaver back for Aliens. Maybe we wouldn't even have a sequel to Ridley Scott's The Alien. Just food for thought. And then if you also put in some research, you'll find out that there was a lot of disputes between the crew in London and the cast and the director himself. So not only did they mock Cameron and his work ethic, they also mocked his wife and accused her of nepotism. That means where you are associated with someone in an industry and they help you get an in. But she had already established herself as a producer on films way before Cameron and her even got married. So there was a lot of shitty situations that Cameron and his crew encountered. But even then, they still came out with a really good film. A film that has established itself as legacy and brought in a lot of new lore for the alien world that Scott and Dan O'Bannon were developing. So as I said earlier, we have Sigourney Weaver coming back as Ripley. We also have Michael Biehn coming in as Hicks. Originally this was going to be played by James Remar, but some things happened behind the scenes and he eventually felt it was best to step down. Paul Reiser, who you know from Stranger Things, and Bill Paxton. You know, rest in peace to Bill Paxton, man. Game over, man. Game over. You know, he played the infamous Hudson, ad-libbed some of the greatest lines in the movie, and he brought a great amount of work into that character, just from a character that was just supposed to be a grunt. The action is top-notch, the story is really good. They introduced a pretty awesome mother-daughter dynamic by introducing the young girl Newt. And of course the set designs again were really good. All the creature designs were amazing. The alien queen was freaking awesome. Definitely an iconic moment in sci-fi horror history. So good. And I won't go any further than that as far as the spoilers and the rest of the story and how the film plays out. I recommend you guys just watch this movie yourself. Definitely holds up to this day. Definitely one of the better horror sci-fi movies out there. And now that brings me into the final contender. Fun bit of trivia, the alien from this movie exists in the same world or universe as the aliens or xenomorphs in Alien. And this is another iconic creature sci-fi horror film. This is The Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So freaking good. Not only Schwarzenegger, but you also had Carl Weathers, who's also currently starring in The Mandalorian. You had Bill Duke, you had Jesse Ventura, and then you have Shane Black, who also is a pretty well acclaimed writer. He was a script doctor for Predator, and then he actually went on to do The Predator from 2018. Wasn't really that good. I had a lot of high hopes for that, but it didn't turn out so good. So The Predator itself has a pretty freaking cool design. It wears a helmet to protect itself and also see in different thermal visions from like actual heat to the black and white and etc. They do have the abilities to have active camouflage. They have energy weapons, and then they use primitive traditional weapons such as blades, spears, and nets. And they also mutilate their prey and end up collecting trophies such as their skulls or spine and a skull all attached. It's pretty crazy. What this film did well at the time too was that it set up a lot of mystery because it didn't give an entire backstory, didn't give you an entire origin breakdown, and that was kind of a main complaint that I'm reading here from a lot of critics that were saying that it has a breakneck pace and it moves pretty quick, and it's supposed to. You're not supposed to know entirely everything about this species. I mean, later, of course, as this film became iconic and it spawned sequels, and spin-offs and comics and whatnot, crossovers with Alien franchise, eventually they started to get more into the lore to explain the backstory behind these predators or hunters. But despite that, this movie still smashed at the box office, making almost $100 million off a $15 million budget, which today would be considered pretty low for movies that are coming out lately, from superhero movies to big action pieces like Tenet and whatnot. The film's awesome, and I think you guys should all give it a chance. It definitely is a fun ride. Very good action, some pretty good horror, and again, the set design's great. The creature design is great, and the technology still holds up even when you're watching it now on an HD TV. And then I also have some honorable mentions that I'm going to throw in here. No particular order, just films that involve a really cool creature that I still dig and has had influence on some of the films that I've come to like in my life. So first up, I have 2008's Cloverfield, directed by Matt Reeves, produced by J.J. Abrams, and written by Drew Goddard. And if any of those names sound familiar, it's probably because they are. Matt Reeves is currently on board to direct The Batman with Robert Pattinson, Paul Dano, and a couple other super big names in the industry and super exciting actors to have for that film. J.J. Abrams, of course, as you know, did the recent Star Wars trilogy, specifically Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. Drew Goddard was the main showrunner and writer for Marvel's Netflix series Daredevil. And this film had a really crazy marketing campaign. I wasn't really aware of it at the time. I was pretty young, so I didn't really have a lot of access to the internet. It had a crazy like online viral marketing campaign with all kinds of products and videos and stuff like that. But this film's really good. It gave us our very first American monster. You can't count Godzilla as the American monster. That was a Japanese creation, so all credit goes to those involved with creating Godzilla. This is another film that opened up a lot of questions but didn't really give a lot of answers. You still have a lot of questions regarding this creature, where it comes from. There's a lot of theories online you can read into. There's actually a lot of proof to proving some of those theories. So it's just one of those films that boggles your mind and makes you ask questions the whole time. It's a very awesome and very fun monster flick. The next film on the honorable mentions list is going to be The Babadook, which is a fucking awesome Australian psychological horror film directed by Jennifer Kent. This was her first directorial debut. This is based off of something called The Monster that she did, which is a short film. Sorry, not The Monster, it's just Monster, just like that. And she also made another recent film called The Nightingale, which I haven't seen yet, but I hear it's pretty good, but it's also pretty graphic and pretty dark and disturbing. But that's only because of the time that it pertains to. That's how brutal Americans really were with Native Americans and women and everything else that that movie involved. I think it's on Hulu if you guys want to check that one out. I think The Babadook might still be on Netflix too if you guys want to check this one out. The Babadook itself, man, is just freaking creepy, and it's so well directed, and it's haunting, and it's mystical, and it feels like you're in a sick, twisted, dark fantasy, or like your mom's reading you a very horrible bedtime story that isn't sweet sounding. The film itself deals a lot with the symbolism of grief and how the mom and her son are dealing with it, especially the mom, and how the Babadook itself is actually a manifestation of that grief in regards to what they're dealing with. And I'm not going to spoil that for anybody that hasn't seen the movie yet. And the final film on my honorable mentions list that I have for you guys is going to be Netflix's The Ritual. This is a pretty recent film, came out 3 years ago on Netflix. The film is based off the novel of the same name by Adam Neville. And then the cast is pretty good. It's pretty tight-knit. It's very small. It's only 4 characters, and then the creature itself. The main character is probably the most recognizable actor. His name is Rafe Spall. He was in Shaun of the Dead. He was also in Hot Fuzz. Pretty damn good actor, I would say. And he was also in Prometheus 2, which is another film that has to do with the video today. I'm not going to get into much spoilers on this one just because it is recent and it's something that you guys have access to if you guys have Netflix accounts, which I'm sure most of you probably do. But some backstory for this movie. The creature itself is named Motor. It is a Norse deity. So some of the powers, it has a bunch of supernatural powers. It can shapeshift, its speed, and it's worshipped by a group in the movie. It is a Jotun, which they're creatures that are bastard sons of Loki. No, not the MCU Loki, just the original god Loki from Norse mythology. So the creature in this film, it basically has a cult from missing hikers and other people that wandered off into this Swedish forest that the group of characters find themselves in. And basically what happens is that Motor will mark the one that has the most emotional pain, and that one is given a choice whether to worship it or be killed at its hands. And that's about all the spoilers I'm going to get into. Again, it's a very great film. I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it yet, go see it. It's super good. It's creepy, so if you're not a big fan of being creeped out, just have your cuddle buddy or your animal, whatever, person, animal, stuffed animal, who cares? Just watch it. I definitely recommend it. You'll have a great time. Alright guys, thank you for sitting through this with me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you guys. It's a lot of fun putting this research in and compiling the videos together. I do have a great time doing it. So with that being said, I thank you once again for watching this, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment on whatever you guys want to ask, whether you guys want some more information or you guys have some recommendations on what movies or what genres I should probably be doing videos for. As far as the next couple of videos that I'm going to be developing, I'm not sure whether I'm going to go through with doing a whole Batman segment based on Robert Pattinson's Batman, or if I'm going to go into the MCU and talk about some recent news regarding some of the TV shows and some of the future films. And as always, this is your friendly neighborhood film geek, the Film Chronicles.